Linda sat on the wooden bench of the small-town train station, the crisp paper of the ticket trembling in her hands. She had never done anything like this before, ever chosen something just for herself. For 50 years, her life had been measured by routines, responsibilities, and the needs of others. Now, in this moment, the air around her felt heavier, filled with both fear and possibility. The journey ahead was unknown, but her heart whispered that it was time. Her fingers traced the bold letters of the destination, a place she had only seen in pictures. She closed her eyes and imagined herself there, walking freely. No longer bound to the same streets she had walked since childhood, hope rose in her chest like a fragile flame, eager to burn brighter. She wondered if courage could grow from such small sparks. The sound of a train horn in the distance echoed her question. The decision to come here had not been easy. Every step felt like breaking invisible chains that tied her to the familiar. People in the station glanced at her, but Linda felt invisible in her quiet determination. The train was coming closer, and with it, the weight of what she was about to do. She breathed deeply, steadying herself. This was not just a journey across miles, but across time. She remembered the countless times she had walked past this station without stopping, always in a hurry, always with someone else's needs ahead of her own. Today was different. Today, she allowed herself to pause and claim a moment. The station clock ticked louder in her ears, as if urging her to move forward. She realized she was no longer waiting for permission. She was giving it to herself. A drop of doubt tried to break through. What if she was too old? What if change was nothing more than a fleeting dream? But Linda straightened her back, feeling the quiet strength inside her. Life had tested her before, and she had endured. Resilience was already in her blood. She could face this too. She told herself that courage was not the absence of fear, it was stepping forward despite it. Around her, people bustled with luggage and conversations, but Linda's world had narrowed to the ticket in her hand. This piece of paper was more than transportation. It was a symbol, a key to a door she had locked away for too long. She held it firmly, determined not to let it slip away. This was her proof that she still had choices, that her story was not finished. As the train approached, she looked down the tracks, shimmering in the late afternoon sun. Her reflection stared back faintly from the window beside her, eyes filled with both uncertainty and hope. This was the beginning of something she could not yet name. And though her journey started here, the reasons behind it stretched deep into her past. Soon, the story of how she arrived at this platform would unfold. It had started weeks earlier, when Linda wandered into the town's library on a quiet afternoon. The place was nearly empty, the faint smell of old books lingering in the air. She used to bring her children here, watching them discover worlds through stories. Now, the silence felt heavier, pressing against her chest. The shelves seemed taller, lonelier, as if they too had lost their purpose. She pulled a book from the shelf at random, flipping through pages without really reading. The words blurred as she thought about all the free hours she now had. Time had once been a luxury, something she begged for between school lunches and bedtime routines. But now, it stretched endlessly, and she wasn't sure what to do with it. The abundance of time felt like emptiness as she walked down the aisles. Her footsteps echoed louder than she expected. Each sound reminded her that she was alone, no small hands tugging at her dress, no eager voices asking for one more story. The library, once filled with laughter, had become a mirror of her solitude. She placed the book back gently, feeling a quiet ache rise within her. Sitting at one of the long wooden tables, Linda glanced at the bulletin board. Flyers advertised book clubs, art classes, and travel lectures. She wondered if she belonged in any of those gatherings. The thought of entering a room full of strangers both frightened and intrigued her. Perhaps she could find connection again, or perhaps she would remain on the outside. Watching the librarian, a young woman with bright eyes, smiled at her kindly. "Looking for something special?" she asked. Linda hesitated before answering. What was she looking for? She didn't know yet. She shook her head softly, returning the smile but offering no explanation. The question lingered in her heart longer than she expected. Something special, that was what she longed for. When she finally left, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk. She carried no books, only the weight of her own reflection. The walk home felt unusually long, every corner of the town too familiar, too unchanged. She felt as though she was drifting in a place that no longer matched who she was becoming. Something inside whispered that she could not stay this way. That night, lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling. The silence was too loud, the clock ticking too steadily. For the first time, She admitted to herself that she was searching not for another book, but for a new chapter in her life, and the search would soon take her beyond the walls of that forgotten library. A few days later, Linda found herself sitting on a bench in the town square. She hadn't planned to stop there, but her feet carried her without thought. Around her, life pulsed with energy, children chasing one another, couples holding hands, groups of friends sharing stories. The laughter and movement contrasted sharply with the stillness she felt inside. She watched quietly, both longing and hurting. She folded her hands in her lap, aware of the empty space beside her. For years, that seat had been filled with her husband, her children, or even friends passing by. Now, the bench was just wood and metal, cool against her skin. She tried to smile at the joy around her, but the ache in her chest deepened. She was a spectator, not a participant. The fountain in the middle of the square sparkled in the sunlight, water leaping into the air and falling again with a rhythm that felt eternal. Linda thought about cycles, beginnings and endings, arrivals and departures. Her own life had shifted into a quieter season, one she didn't know how to navigate. The fountain seemed to mock her stillness, reminding her that life kept flowing, even when she stood still. She noticed a young mother pushing a stroller, laughing as her toddler clapped at the pigeons. The sight warmed her but also reminded her of days long gone. Those moments had been her world once, and they had passed too quickly. She wondered if she had given herself fully back then, or if she had missed something by always looking ahead. The thought unsettled her. Nearby, two teenagers played guitar and sang, their voices bold and unafraid. Linda admired their courage to share their music openly. She wondered when she had stopped daring to express herself. Somewhere along the way, her own voice had grown quiet, buried under the weight of responsibility. Watching them stirred a small spark of curiosity. What if she could find her voice again? The square was filled with connections she no longer had, and yet, instead of bitterness, she felt a longing to rejoin life's rhythm. She imagined herself stepping off the bench, walking into something new, but her feet remained still, her courage not yet strong enough. The contrast of her longing and hesitation settled deeply in her heart. When she finally rose from the bench, the sky was streaked with shades of orange and pink. The day had passed without her noticing. She walked home slowly, but with a new awareness. Watching life go by was no longer enough. She wanted to live it again, and soon, she would need to find the courage to take her first step. One rainy morning, Linda opened a wooden box she had kept at the back of her closet for years. Inside were old letters, tied with faded ribbons, filled with words from friends and family. She had once treasured these notes, reading them whenever she needed comfort. Now, as she unfolded one, she realized how much time had passed. Many of those friendships had drifted, and some voices were forever silent. She traced the handwriting of a friend who had moved away decades ago. The letters spoke of shared dreams, promises to visit, and stories of adventures. Linda smiled faintly but also felt a pang of regret. She had stayed rooted in the same town, while others had followed their paths. The letters were proof of journeys taken without her. She wondered if she had missed her chance. Another letter was from her mother, written years before she passed. The words carried warmth, urging Linda to be brave, to live fully. Tears blurred her vision as she read. She realized that the advice she had once tucked away now spoke directly to her present longing. Her mother's voice, though gone, still called her toward courage. It felt like a quiet blessing. As the rain tapped softly against the window, Linda placed the letters on her lap. Each one was a fragment of her past, but together they told a bigger story. They reminded her of connections once alive, of dreams once shared. She felt both sadness and hope. If others had found the strength to move forward, perhaps she could too. The box was no longer just a memory, it was a reminder. She carefully tied the ribbons again, but this time with a new intention. The letters would not return to the closet. Instead, she left them on her nightstand, a silent encouragement waiting for her each morning. Their presence reminded her that stories continue, and hers was far from over. The rain outside seemed to echo that truth, washing the world clean. As she closed the box, Linda whispered to herself, "It's not too late." The words startled her, but they felt right. She had never spoken them out loud before. Saying them gave them weight, as if the universe had heard her. For the first time, the possibility of a new beginning felt real, and the whisper would soon grow into action. The storm passed, leaving the air fresh and clear. Linda stood by the window, looking out at the quiet streets. Something inside her shifted, subtle but certain. The box of letters had opened more than memories, it had opened a door. And through that door, she was ready to step into the unknown. It happened on a sunny afternoon, as Linda was leaving the grocery store. She bumped into an old neighbor, Margaret, who carried a bright smile and a suitcase by her side. They hadn't spoken in years, yet Margaret greeted her warmly. "I'm just back from a trip," she said with excitement, her eyes shining with stories yet to be told. Linda felt curiosity stir within her. Margaret spoke about the places she had visited, the people she had met, and the joy of discovering something new at every turn. Linda listened quietly, her heart both heavy and light, heavy with the weight of her own stillness, light with the possibility Margaret's words opened up. She realized she had been starving for conversations, like this ones that made her imagine life beyond her own walls. Margaret noticed the spark in Linda's eyes. "You should travel, Linda," she encouraged gently. "It's never too late to see the world, to start fresh somewhere new." The words landed like seeds in Linda's heart, small but full of promise. She smiled politely, but inside, something was shifting. The thought was no longer distant, it was near. They parted ways at the corner of the street, Margaret wheeling her suitcase behind her. Linda stood still, watching until she disappeared. The sound of the suitcase wheels echoed in her mind, blending with the thought of trains, roads, and journeys waiting to be taken. She carried her groceries home, but her mind was already elsewhere. That evening, as she unpacked, she found herself lingering over a travel magazine tucked in the bag. It must have slipped in with Margaret's suitcase somehow, or perhaps it was fate. The glossy pages showed places she had never seen, skies painted with colors she had only dreamed of. She traced the images with her fingers, her heart racing at the idea. The magazine stayed on her kitchen table, open to a page showing a bustling train station in a faraway city. She kept glancing at it, as if it were calling her. The idea no longer felt like a whisper. It was growing louder, more insistent. The possibility of a journey, once unthinkable, was now becoming a desire she could not ignore. That night, as she drifted to sleep, she heard Margaret's words echo again. "It's never too late." The phrase wrapped around her like a blanket, filling her with both courage and anticipation. She didn't know where it would lead, but she knew something inside her had already begun to move. Linda woke the next morning with Margaret's words still lingering in her thoughts. The idea of leaving, of traveling somewhere new, felt different now. It was no longer just a dream tucked away in the corners of her heart. It was a seed, planted firmly, asking to grow. As she made her morning tea, she caught herself staring out the window longer than usual, imagining what lay beyond the horizon. She opened her laptop, hesitant at first. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing. Train journeys across the country. Images and stories flooded her screen. She scrolled through photos of landscapes, cities, and smiling travelers. Each picture stirred something inside her. It was as though a door had opened, and she could glimpse another life waiting for her. Hope flickered, stronger than before. The more she read, the more the idea took root. She scribbled notes on a piece of paper, places that caught her attention, train routes that felt possible, costs she might manage. It was a simple act, but it felt revolutionary. For the first time in years, she was making plans for herself. The paper filled with names and numbers, a map of possibilities she never dared to draw before. But along with excitement came doubt. Could she really do this? Would people laugh at her for wanting something new at her age? She pressed her pen harder against the paper, fighting the fear. Resilience, she reminded herself, was built on small choices. This was just one choice, one step, but it mattered. It was the beginning of her transformation. That Linda folded the paper carefully and placed it on her nightstand, beside the box of letters. Both now felt like companions in her journey, the past urging her to be brave, the future inviting her forward. She smiled faintly, realizing that courage often began with simple acts. Even writing down dreams was an act of courage. She had started. The day passed with a different rhythm. Chores that once felt heavy now seemed lighter, as though her heart had found a new song. She moved through her home with quiet purpose, carrying the thought of trains and destinations in her pocket like a secret. Every glance at her notes reminded her of what could be. Possibility was alive. That night, she whispered to herself again, "It's not too late." But this time, it wasn't just a reassurance. It was a promise that she would not let the seed of this idea wither away. She would water it with courage, and soon, it would grow into something real. Linda decided to test her resolve by taking small steps. She visited the train station in town, not to travel yet, but to watch. The sound of engines, the flow of passengers, the rhythm of departure and arrival, all of it filled her with a mix of fear and anticipation. She stood quietly, studying the schedules on the wall. Each destination felt like a possibility, each ticket a door waiting to open. She approached the counter, her hands trembling slightly. "Just looking," she told the clerk when asked if she needed help, but the simple act of standing there, of considering the options, felt like a bold move. She walked away without buying anything, but her heart beat faster. She had crossed an invisible threshold. Even standing at the counter was a step toward change. At home, she began organizing small things. She cleared a drawer, set aside clothes she might pack, and created a folder for travel notes. It wasn't much, but it felt purposeful. Each action whispered to her that she was preparing, even if she hadn't admitted it fully yet. Hope grew stronger with each drawer she opened, with each list she wrote. She also began talking to herself more kindly. For years, her inner voice had been full of doubts and obligations. Now, she practiced saying words of encouragement. "You are allowed to dream," she would murmur while folding laundry. "You are strong enough to start again." At first, it felt strange, but gradually, the words began to take root. She felt her courage rising. One evening, she stood before the mirror and looked herself in the eyes. She saw lines of age, but also resilience. She whispered, "I'm still here. I still matter." The reflection stared back at her with quiet strength. It was a small ritual, but it felt sacred. It reminded her that transformation began within. Her children called occasionally, busy with their own lives. She didn't tell them yet about her plans, but she smiled more during their conversations. There was a secret blooming inside her, a source of quiet joy. She knew they would support her when the time came. But for now, this journey was hers alone, and that made it even more meaningful. That night, she fell asleep with a notebook beside her, filled with new ideas, trains, destinations, budgets, dreams. The list was not yet complete, but it was growing, like her courage, and tomorrow, she knew, would bring another small step forward. Yet, with each step forward, fear followed close behind. One morning, Linda woke with a weight on her chest. Doubts gathered like gray clouds over a quiet field. What if her savings vanished into a mistake? What if new beginnings proved lonelier than the life she knew? She sat at the kitchen table, staring at her notes. The routes looked long, the prices unforgiving, the plans fragile. Her courage felt small against the world's size. Resilience seemed like a word for other people. Tears pricked, and she looked away. She made tea and watched the steam rise. The kettle whispered, and the house answered with silence. She wanted someone to say it would be okay. Instead, she found only her reflection in the window, a woman between fear and the future. She opened the box of letters and breathed slowly. Her mother's line echoed, gentle and firm. "Live fully, be brave, trust your steps." Linda pressed the paper to her heart. The ache softened, if only a little. Outside, a breeze moved, the wind chimes. Their simple music steadied her breath. She wrote a small sentence at the top of her notes. "I can try, one step at a time." The sentence felt like a hand to hold. She gave herself permission to pause, not quit. She folded the plans, then unfolded them again. She circled a modest route she could afford. Hope returned as a quiet glow, not a shout. Courage, she realized, can be gentle. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A familiar name lit the screen with warm light. She wiped her eyes and answered the call. "Hi, Mom," her son said, voice kind and steady. The support she needed was arriving. Her son spoke about work and ordinary things. He asked how she was sleeping these days. Linda hesitated, then said she was planning a trip. There was a soft pause on the line. "That sounds exciting," he answered. She expected warnings, but received trust. "You've always taken care of everyone," he said. "It's your turn now, Mom." The words opened a window inside her. Fresh air filled the room with hope. That they laughed over small memories from years ago. Train stories, summer road maps, picnic stops. The past did not hold her back this time. It blessed her steps into life transformation. She felt lighter after every sentence. "I can help with the apps," he offered. "Let's check timetables and seats together." He emailed the simple guide that he used. Linda followed along and learned the steps. Progress replaced confusion, one click at a time. When the call ended, the house felt different. Not louder, but brighter, like morning sun. She printed a checklist he had sent. Purpose took shape in ink and boxes. Resilience became action instead of a slogan. She practiced opening the ticket website again. She read the refund rules and selected dates. She compared windows and aisle seats carefully. Each choice strengthened the muscle of courage. She smiled at the woman she was becoming. A message arrived. "Proud of you, truly." Her eyes watered, but with relief this time. She whispered thanks to the quiet room. Then she rested her hand over the mouse. Tomorrow would be the day to decide. Morning light found her ready at the desk. She breathed in for 4, out for 4. The screen glowed with routes across states. The destination name steadied her heartbeat. She felt the future leaning closer. Her finger hovered over the button. Old fears rose, asking for one more delay. Linda answered with a calm, clear no. She clicked purchase and watched the circle spin. A new beginning printed into being. The confirmation email chimed like a bell. She read it twice, then 3 more times. The ticket was real, and so was she. Hope swelled warm behind her ribs. Courage had left a paper trail. She packed a small trial bag to test socks, a sweater, a notebook for reflections, a family photo tucked in the side, not to hold her back, but to bless her. Purpose fit neatly between the zippers. Afternoon found her walking to the station. She studied platforms and counted steps between signs. Practice eased the edges of uncertainty. Resilience lived in repetition and calm breaths. She pictured herself moving with ease. Home. She marked the calendar square. 1 week to prepare with kindness, not panic. She listed tiny tasks and gentle goals. Each checkmark was a whisper of progress. The fear had less room to grow. Before bed, she placed the ticket nearby. She touched it like a promise kept. The night seemed friendlier than before. She slept with the window slightly open. The world felt close and welcoming. The final evening arrived with quiet rain. Linda folded shirts into tidy stacks. She chose comfort over perfection and pace over style. A soft scarf for courage, a pen for plans. The suitcase opened like a small stage. She walked room to room, slowly, not as a farewell, but as gratitude. Each corner held a story and a lesson. She thanked the walls for safe seasons. She thanked herself for staying strong. Doubt returned for one last try. It asked who she thought she was. She answered kindly, "I am learning still. I am allowed new beginnings now." The doubt slipped back into the dark. She brewed chamomile and sat by the window. Streetlights pooled like little lakes. She wrote a note to the future Linda. "Keep going, be gentle, trust small steps." The words steadied her breathing. Her phone pinged with a message. Margaret sent a photo of a sunrise. "For your first morning on the road," it read. Linda saved it with a grateful smile. Friendship felt like a lantern on the path. She set 2 alarms and zipped the case. The sound clicked like a quiet drum. Purpose filled the spaces between objects. Hope settled on the pillow beside her. Sleep came honest and deep. Just before dreaming, she pictured the platform. She saw herself walking forward with grace. The vision ended on a silver door. A handle waited for her hand. The night closed like a blessing. Dawn painted soft gold on the floorboards. Linda brewed coffee and watched the steam rise. Not a symbol of loneliness today. A warm start, a steady hand, a gift. She tasted courage with each sip. She set her keys on the counter. She touched the doorframe with a grateful palm. She whispered thanks to the rooms she knew. The house, in turn, seemed to exhale peace. They were partying as friends, not strangers. A neighbor waved from the sidewalk. "Safe travels," he called with easy kindness. She waved back and felt supported. Community lived in small gestures and smiles. Resilience loves good company. She took a final look at the garden. Leaves trembled, bright with morning water. She promised to return to visit, not retreat. This was life transformation, not escape. New beginnings honored the past. She lifted the suitcase and felt its weight. Manageable, honest, exactly enough. She was not leaving to become someone else. She was becoming more fully herself. Purvis walked out the door with her. The taxi arrived with gentle brakes. She slid in and named the station. The city felt kind as it rolled by. Familiar streets wished her well, in silence. Linda's breath matched the moving wheels. When the station roof came into view, her eyes shone. This farewell had turned into a blessing. She paid, stepped out, and stood tall. The day opened like a bright platform. The journey met her halfway. Crowds flowed like rivers around pillars. Announcements echoed with soft authority. Linda watched for her platform number calmly. She followed signs like steady stars. Hope paced beside her in rhythm. At the gate, she showed her ticket. The scanner beeped a clear welcome. She stepped toward the silver train door. Her heart tapped a new, brave tempo. Courage felt present and real. Inside, the aisle hummed with life. Luggage wheels, quiet greetings, a distant laugh. She found her seat by the window. The cushion held her like a promise. She placed the notebook on her lap. A child across the aisle waved shyly. Linda waved back and smiled. Connection, simple and bright, warmed the air. Resilience often begins with small kindness. The car felt friendlier already. The train shuddered and began to move. Buildings slid by like pages turning. She wrote a single sentence in ink. Today I chose myself with love. The words steadied her shoulders. She watched power lines dance in patterns. Fields opened into long green sheets. The rhythm of travel lulled her gently. Purpose gathered like birds in formation. She breathed in time with the tracks. A conductor paused and nodded kindly. First trip, he asked with a smile. First in a long time, Linda replied. He tipped his cap and moved on. Ahead, the horizon waited wider. Hours stitched together in quiet grace. Hills rose and softened into plains. Towns appeared like brief stories, then faded. Linda let the motion wash her worries. Peace settled where panic once lived. She opened the notebook again. She listed values she wished to grow. Courage, hope, resilience, purpose, kindness. Each word felt like a rail beneath her. Strong, simple, guiding her forward. A friendly seatmate asked about her trip. Linda shared only what felt right. I'm starting a new chapter, she said. The words tasted honest and light. They sounded like a blessing spoken aloud. The dining car offered warm bread and soup. She ate slowly and watched the sky widen. She felt cared for by ordinary things. A spoon, a seat, a window, a view. Support can be beautifully simple. Back at her place, she planned gently. She circled the city in New Mexico, Santa Fe, with art, markets, and sunlight, a place to learn and contribute. New beginnings need a welcoming shore. She imagined, teaching a weekend workshop, journaling for courage and fresh starts. A small room, a circle of chairs, voices brave enough to tell the truth. The image filled her with quiet joy. As twilight gathered, she closed her eyes. The train breathed like a living thing. She rested in the cradle of motion. Life transformation felt not sudden but steady. The next stop would change everything. Morning light revealed red earth and sky. The station signs spelled Santa Fe clearly. Linda stood, smoothed her scarf, and waited. The doors opened with a gentle sigh. She stepped onto the platform smiling. The air was bright and welcoming. Markets stirred awake with color and craft. A buska played soft guitar nearby. She felt her heartbeat matched the melody. Purpose walked beside her confidently. She found a small rental room downtown. Sun pooled on the wooden floor. She placed the photo by the window, not to cling, but to bless the present. Hope brightened every corner. In the afternoon, she visited a community center. A coordinator greeted her with curiosity and care. Linda proposed a Saturday journaling circle. Courage for new beginnings, open to all. The idea landed like a seed. They penciled a date 2 weeks ahead. She designed a flyer with simple words. Write your next chapter with resilience and hope. Her name looked brave in print. Life transformation had taken form. At sunset, she walked a quiet street. The city glowed like warm clay. She breathed deeply and felt very alive. Gratitude rose like a clear spring. She knew she had arrived in herself. That night, she wrote one final note. I am 50, and I am starting. The journey is kind, and I am ready. Tomorrow, I will welcome others forward, and the story will continue.